Shalom, y'all. Welcome back to Light of the Scroll. We're going to start something new, a little out of my comfort zone. Maybe that way you can actually get to know who you're talking to, or well, who's on this side of the camera, right? You actually have a face now. So let's just get right into it. Today we're beginning a two-part series on Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the first of Yah's appointed times in the spring. Now, in the last couple of videos, I talked about the holidays and God's holy days. So we celebrate the times that were put into the Bible from God, not from man. And so this year, and so kind of trying to get you sort of ready, if you will, to decide if this is what you want to do. Is this what I think you should do? Absolutely. But it's all on your time. It's all on Yah's time and your convictions. However, I do think that they're important. I do think that they are still applicable today. I do think that everybody should be following these feast days, not just the Jews. So this year, Passover begins the evening of April 1st and ends the evening of April 2nd. And then immediately following Passover is the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which begins the evening of April 2nd and continues through the evening of April 8th, lasting 7 days as per Scripture. And just remember that in the Bible, days begin at sundown, not at midnight. So when we say April 1st or April 2nd, we're talking about that evening, not the following morning. Okay? All right. So before we talk about the meaning, before we talk about Messiah, before we talk about how we should walk this out today, we need to go back to where Passover came from, how it came to be, because Passover and unleavened bread were not created by tradition. They were not created by Judaism. It was created well before. God gave this to the people of Israel, and it was not created by man. They were established by Yah himself right after and during the deliverance of being set free from slavery. And when we follow God and follow Jesus, we are immediately set free of our bondage. And then, of course, we love Yah to the fullest, that we obey his commands. So, the children of Israel did not start out as slaves in Egypt. Yah had made a covenant with Abraham, a promise that his descendants would become a great nation. Over generations, that family grew, and through the events recorded in Genesis, they came to live in Egypt. So, but in Exodus 1:1 tells us that a new Pharaoh arose, one who did not know Joseph, because Joseph was esteemed by the previous Pharaoh, and the new Pharaoh replaced favor over fear. So Egypt once sheltered them, and now it's going to enslave them. So the Israelites were forced into hard labor. They were oppressed. They were afflicted. They were worked ruthlessly. Exodus 1:13-14 says, "So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service." Exodus 2:23-25 tells us the people groaned because of their slavery, and their cry came up to God. Scripture says Yah heard, and Yah remembered his covenant. He saw and he knew. So the deliverance did not begin because they suddenly became righteous. It began because Yah is faithful to his promises. So Moses was born during a time when Hebrew baby boys were being killed. His life was preserved, and he was raised in Pharaoh's household. Now, one thing to note, and I think this is pretty cool to think about, basically, Passover is in 3 months, and Moses was actually, his mother kept him for 3 months before she realized that she could not hide him any longer. So it wasn't that Moses was 3 months old and this decree came out. She had hid him for 3 months. So Moses saw that there was, when he came to the realization of who he was, and you can go read this, on your own. Don't just have faith in what I'm saying. Read it on your own as well. Moses got angry and he killed an Egyptian. He then fled to the wilderness and spent 40 years as a shepherd. So, and gotta think, okay, so 40, that's a number in the Bible, okay? Just remember 40. It's not just stated in this. Yeshua spent 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights with Noah. Now, it didn't stop raining and Noah was not only there for 40 days. Go read it because I thought different too. There is way more to the story. They were on that boat, on the ark, for a very long time. 100 and something days, I want to say. It just rained for 40 days and 40 nights. It took a while for it to recede. So Yah's going to strip your pride before he allows you to do things. In Exodus 3, Yah spoke to Moses through the burning bush and revealed himself as I am. He told Moses plainly in Exodus 3, 7 through 8, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry, and I have come down to deliver them. Yah then sent Moses back to Egypt, not with suggestions, but with a command. And Moses he tried telling God, you don't want me. I'm not the right person for this. Do you have times when you do that? I know I do. So, but there was a command. If Moses didn't do as God said, where would we be? I don't know. So Moses stood before Pharaoh and said exactly what Yah instructed. Exodus 5:1 says, Thus Yahweh, the God of Israel, says, Let my people go. Well, we know that Pharaoh refused. And what followed were the plagues. And it was Yah showing that he alone is sovereign. Time after time, Pharaoh hardened his heart until Yah announced the final plague. In Exodus 11 and 12, Yah declared the firstborn in the land of Egypt would die. But Yah made a distinction between Egypt and who? Israel. Not the Jews. Israel. Each household of Israel was commanded to take a lamb without blemish, slaughter it, and place its blood on the doorposts and the lintel of their home. Exodus 12:13 says, The blood shall be a sign for you, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. This is where Passover gets its name. Judgment passed over the homes marked by blood, not because the people were perfect, but because they trusted Yah and they obeyed him. It's just a simple, like, that's not so hard to do. I mean, everybody talks about how the laws are so hard to follow. They're not when you don't add to or take away. See there? You put the blood on your doorpost and on your lintels, and then we're going to be passed over. And it's not because they were perfect and righteous. That night, Egypt mourned. Pharaoh broke because his son was part of this. And Israel was released from slavery. Then Yah said something crucial. Exodus 12:14 says, This day shall be a day for you, a memorial day, and you shall keep it as a feast to Yahweh throughout your generations. as a statute forever. Immediately following Passover, Yahweh instituted the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Exodus 12:15 says the people were to eat unleavened bread for 7 days. Why? Because when they left Egypt, they left it in haste, and there was no time for the bread to rise. There was no time to carry their old life with them. Think about that. Unleavened bread became a physical reminder that redemption requires separation. Exodus 2:17 says, "You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for on this very day I brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim," or Egypt. Yahweh tied deliverance to obedience. Unleavened bread was commanded to be kept year after year immediately following Passover, not as a suggestion, but an instruction from Yah, so we shall never forget. These stories in the Old Testament, they're not just stories. They actually happened, they're actually true, and they are from the people of God. And technically our relatives, whether we've been adopted / grafted in, or if some of us may be truly from the 12 tribes. We don't know what that bloodline is. So before we talk about Messiah, before we talk about fulfillment, before we talk about how believers should observe these days today, we must understand this foundation. Passover and unleavened bread were established by Yah as acts of deliverance, as an appointed time to remember who brought his people out of bondage. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about how these appointed times point forward, how they connect to Messiah, and why they still matter today, not as legalism, but as obedience that flows from love. And if you want to continue your set-apart journey, please check out my Etsy shop, Sanctified by Yahweh. You will see the description in below. Use these tools to document your walk, deepen your study, and strengthen your obedience as you grow. Shalom, y'all, if that's the way you follow. If not, have a blessed rest of your week.